During orientation, each corps learned how to use their specific GPS to gather the spatial data for each project your team works on. Throughout the season, your team should have collected various tracks and waypoints. We need to make sure these end up on the Google Drive in the proper format in which the Nature Conservancy can report them to NOAA. Today's video will explain how to take the data, those tracks and waypoints, from your GPS and download them onto your computer using a few different software. One being Google Earth Pro, which Gulfcorp uses as a GIS, or Geographic Information System, to analyze the data collected. A link to a tutorial on Google Earth Pro is in the description below. You must have Google Earth Pro downloaded for the work I am going to walk us through. Therefore, if you do not have this, now is the time to follow that link in the description and do so. The software we will be using to transfer GPS data onto the computer is called DNR GPS. Together, we will walk through downloading the program and transferring data from it. Here is an overview of the objectives of today's video. Together, we will walk through downloading DNR GPS, the software we will use to transfer data from our GPS to our computer. Once DNR GPS recognizes our data, we will be able to download it to Google Earth Pro. On Google Earth Pro, we can make any necessary edits to our data so that we can find the metrics to input into our crew logs. When our data is good to go, we will use Google Earth Pro to save the data to our computer. And lastly, we want to make sure to upload that data to our reporting folder on the Google Drive. In order to complete these objectives, you will need the following list of materials: a computer with internet connection, the GPS unit that has the data collected from the season, a GPS connector cord, which would have come with the GPS unit, Google Earth Pro, and access to edit your corps' reporting folder on the Google Drive. In order to download DNR GPS, you will want to pull up your browser and open Google and simply type in DNR GPS download. You'll click this first link here from Minnesota University. You'll want to go under the Download Program heading and choose this DNR GPS for ArcMap 10.2 Plus. Simply click on it, and it should begin downloading. Sometimes it might give you a little bit of issues, so you can also right-click on it, choose to open a new tab, and it'll begin the downloading process. Make sure you click Open when done so that the file will open in your Windows pane when it's done downloading. When that file is done downloading, it will automatically open if you selected it to do so, and you'll see that it downloaded into the Downloads folder. And so if we open this, there's a bunch of data in here, but it's not any of the actual application. So we actually need to make sure to extract this folder. And to do so, we just simply click on this Downloads folder. And you'll see here this little zip. This means it's a zip file, so we need to extract it. We can just right-click, go to Extract All, and you can save this wherever you'd prefer. Just make sure that the Show Extracted Files when complete is selected. All right, so it looks like nothing happened, but when we click into the DNR GPS folder now, we actually have this application file that we're able to click on and open the application. So we'll go ahead and double click that. And our application is ready to be used. So We just have our application open now, and the first thing that we want to do is set our projections so that they match what we have on our GPS that we're downloading data from. And so you will go to File, Set Projection, and you just want to make sure that this datum is in WGS 84 and that you are in a UTM zone. So here in Alabama, we use UTM zone 16N. This should work for most of us in the Southeast. We'll just click OK. So now that we have our projection set, we can go ahead and plug in our GPS unit. So you'll take that connector cord and put it into the GPS and plug it in to a USB port on your computer. And you'll give it a moment, you'll give the computer a moment to register the device. You may have a Windows box pop up. And this is just showing that it's recognizing the unit. We can just close that out. And so we know that the application is also recognizing the GPS unit by this red dot down here. So that red dot needs to turn green to make sure that the unit is being recognized and we can transfer data to and from. So right now, if we tried to do so, it's going to have it grayed out, which means we can't do anything. So what we're going to do is we're going to click GPS up here, click Find GPS. You see that it says searching for GPS, and that light turned green, so now it is recognizing our GPS unit. And so we'll be able to go ahead and look at our information. There's a couple ways to do this. We can download all of the information, which will show multiple tracks, all of our waypoints and routes. We can do it via just waypoints. Again, you'll just be able to select from here, and the same with tracks. So let's do an example just using a track. So I'll click track, download, and I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to do an example of a fire break our team did at, let's see, Alta Fish River. Click OK. And so it's going to pull up all of the points that it took during that track. And what we're going to need to do is save this to Google Earth Pro so we can actually view the data. And to do so, we'll want to select all of this, which you can do so by just clicking up here in this right corner to select all. We'll go to File, and then Save to, Database, and you'll see here it says Google Earth, My Places under Connection Name, and it'll show you the current layers that you have in Google Earth Pro. So here I already have this Bayfront Park boundary. So what I want to do is make sure that this is saved before clicking OK, because it may override that information. So I'm just going to click cancel and go in and make sure that data is saved. So we'll go to Google Earth Pro. And close out of the startup tips. And again, you'll see under My Places that this Bayfront information is here. And so to save this information to our computer, since this My Places may be overwritten, we can just right click, Save Place As, and you can save it wherever you need to on your computer. I already have this one saved as a KML, so I'm not going to worry about that. And then we can go ahead, you don't have to delete it or anything because again it'll just override it, so we'll just close out of Google Earth Pro. And one thing you have to do when you're downloading this data from the DNR GPS is make sure that Google Earth Pro is closed, because it won't be able to recognize it unless you open it afterwards. So again, we have this data selected. We'll go to Save To, Database, Google Earth My Places, and again, it's probably going to, so we'll click OK, and it's going to ask us to override the information in a moment, but before that, it's going to ask us if it wants us to save it as a point, line, or polygon. And so point is referring to just a single point, like a waypoint. A line, so our track, if it was just a single line, for this example, we will choose line because it was a fire break. That's why we would take that with measurements in that we talked about in that trail video. And a polygon is more when we walk the perimeter of an area and we're looking to get the entire area. So for this one, we're just going to use line, so we can click OK. And it went ahead and saved it to the database. And we can make sure that it's on there by just going to Google Earth Pro. I'm going to just turn that off so it doesn't keep popping up. And you'll see in My Places it did override that boundary, Bayshore Park boundary that we previously had. So it's a good thing that we saved that so we didn't lose any of our information. But we can go ahead and double click here and it'll zoom us into this information. Go ahead and click the X. So we just went through a lot of information, so let's just check back at our objectives to see where we're at. We've met our first objective of downloading the DNR GPS application, and the second objective of downloading data from our GPS unit to that DNR GPS application, and finally to Google Earth Pro. So next on our list is to get the metrics for our crew logs. File on Google Earth give us a great visual representation of the data we collected, but what we need is that numerical value, that acreage value that we can put into our crew log. And so the way we're going to do that is we're going to have to trace over our data. That's the easiest way to do it using Google Earth. We're doing that because if you right-click on the file and go to Properties, you won't be able to get the information as far as to how far or the length of this line. So we can just click Cancel here. What we'll want to do instead is if you click to create a path and start tracing over it, and we'll zoom in just a minute, but you can see what's happening is there's a Measurements tab because we're creating this in Google Earth. We can go to Measurements and it's going to show us our meters value that we're going to need to calculate that acreage. So I'm going to zoom in just a little bit and show y'all. And I'll point out one great thing about tracing over this as well is you'll see up here, because they were walking with the GPS unit, there was a couple times they might have walked over the same place, and so that's going to mess up our data just a little bit and cause some errors in reading it to get that measurement value. So retracing it, we can make sure that it doesn't overlap. Oop, and I'll undo that. Just make sure we get it as close as possible. Zoom in a little bit more. And we're going to try to just get as close as we can. All right, so for this section, I'm just gonna pop over here and here, since that's what it looks like it should have been done. Awesome, and now we have 360 meters for this line. So I'm gonna go ahead and save this as the new version of this. Click OK. And I'm going to turn the other one off just so. There we go. Before we move on to calculating that acreage amount for that fire break, I wanted to show you how this would work for a polygon. So this is a polygon that was given to me by a partner. This is an area that we're going to map. And again, it's the same thing. If I go to properties, there's no measurements value. And so click cancel. And what we're going to use up here is this add polygon tool. So I'll click that. And once again, can go further in. And we're going to trace this. All right, looks like we got pretty close. Can always mess with it as much as you need to, but for today's example, we'll just leave it as that. And you'll go to measurements, and we'll go ahead. So we don't need the perimeter in this case, we need area. So we're gonna do all of our metrics in acres. So this one's easy, it's 19 acres. And so that's the number you'd put into your crew log. Back over at our fire break, again, our measurement was 360 meters, but when we're reporting for fire breaks or trails, we need to report in acres. And so that's the reason when you have those trail data sheets that you're asked to take trail measurements to come up with a average trail width or fire break width to calculate that acreage amount. There is a video on the Golf Corps YouTube channel on trail monitoring. I've put that link into the description of this video as well. So if you need to refresh yourself on the trail monitoring or fire break monitoring, go ahead and watch that video. But to keep things simple for today, for this fire break, we got a 6 meter width average. So what we're going to do is we're just going to multiply length times width to get our acreage. And so we're going to take that 360, and I'm just going to pull up a calculator on Google. So we're going to take that 360, multiply it by 6. That gives us 2,160 squared meters. And you want to make sure that those units match up. So make sure you're always doing it in meters, you're always doing it in feet. So I'll go ahead and put 260 square meters. And I want to convert that to acres. So we can simply just say to acres. And luckily we're living in the age that the internet is able to do a lot of this for us. And so there is our acreage amount. So I always round to 2 decimal places. So it's going to be 0.53 acres, a total for our fire break. And that is what you're going to put into your crew log. We've accomplished our third objective of getting the metrics for this track, and go ahead and upload that into the crew log. Our next objective is to save the data from Google Earth onto our computer. So to do that, it's very simple. We're just going to right click on the file. So this is, if you had to trace over the file, make sure that you're not selecting the original file, but the one that you just created. You'll right click it, click Save Place As, and you'll go ahead and save it wherever you need to save it. And you'll save it as a KML or a KMZ, whichever is fine. And then we are able to go to our final step, of making sure that that information gets into the drive. In order for the Nature Conservancy to get this data, we need to have it on the Google Drive instead of just sitting on our computer. And so we'll go ahead and open up our CROWS reporting folder, and we're going to put all of this information into the monitoring folder. So we'll double click on that. Go ahead and click year 4 since we're in year 4 of the program. If you have data from past years, make sure you go into the appropriate year and place that data. But we'll go ahead and go into year 4. And you'll see that the folder is set up by all of your project sites. And so you're going to want to go to the specific project that you worked on. For us, it was this AL12. And just like your crew logs, it is separated by activity type. So it's really easy for everything to stay organized. And so this was a fire break. So our activity would be activity 4, prescribed burn and fire preparation. And the way I like to do this is we do a couple different sites with this partner, so I separate it by that specific project site. Or you can just upload the data if it's just one site that you're working on. So for us, it's this Alta Fish River. And you'll see some previous folders in here, or some files in here. We're going to go ahead and just upload the one we did. So you can go to File, File Upload. And I just saved it openly here. Click OK. Give it a minute to download or upload. Awesome, so it pops in right there. And so we're almost done. We just need to make sure that we're naming it correctly. And just to let you know, the reason that these have blue spheres and this a red square is because this is saved as a KML. These as KMZs. They're basically the same file type, so you can save it as either or. It'll still be able to be opened by Google Earth Pro. So you can see that this has a specific naming mechanism. So we're going to need to match that naming mechanism. And you can find that information by going back out to the beginning of the year 4 monitoring folder. Scroll down, and you'll see here there's a year 4 file naming cheat sheet at the bottom of all of your materials. When you open that Word document, the naming cheat sheet, you'll want to scroll down to the section describing GIS data, which is coming from your GPS. You'll see again that it wants us to upload this in a KML or KMZ format, and we're going to follow this specific naming protocol, which is first project number, date of collection, type of activity, and type of data. And there's some examples here that we're going to use, but let's go ahead and name that one that we just uploaded. To rename this file, we're going to right click on it, click rename. We're going to remember that the date was 1/14 of 2021. And so our first step is to do the name of the site, or the code for the site, which is AL12. And then our date was 2021/01/14. Next is the activity type, so it was fire prep. And lastly, it's the type of information. So this is just a length, so we'll put length. And click OK. Let's go ahead and revisit our objectives one last time. So we've already seen that we've met the first and second objective of downloading DNR GPS and then taking the data from our GPS and putting it into Google Earth Pro via DNR GPS. And together we traced over our data to get the length amount, and we were able to get the acreage amount by multiplying by width, and we were able to put that acreage amount into our crew log so we can check off the third one. Fourth was just to save our data to our computer via Google Earth Pro. And lastly, we were able to upload that data specifically in a KML or KMZ format to our reporting folder on the Google Drive. So that last one is really the most important one out of this, and specifically in that KML or KMZ format. Sometimes folks have uploaded the GPS data in code, and it's not something we can really do with that. So it's important to put it in the KML or KMZ format so that the Nature Conservancy can process that information and be able to visualize it. It's also important to remember to name these accordingly so that everybody is on the same page of where this information is tied to. So give yourselves a round of applause, and thanks for sticking with me today. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at karnold@thesca.org. It can be specifically about this video or related to anything monitoring. I'm always available. So thanks again for sticking with us, and good luck.